So Bunnelby spawns are back in droves in Pokemon Go with the current spring event here. Between this and LurganRocket taking the first ever Pokemon Go championship in Liverpool with a Diggersby on his team, I figured it'd be a good time to update my Diggersby PvP IV deep dive and finally do an article format for it as well, which I have already done. Link in the description if you want to check out the information of this guide in a text-based format. What's interesting about this deep dive too is that I actually got some input from LurganRocket himself, the Diggersby master. I mean, he's technically the Cresselia master. He's the Liverpool master, right? So he gave me some tips on the Diggersby as well, which I think you guys might find to be interesting and useful. Now in this deep dive, as with all of my deep dives, I talk about the breakpoints and the true stats of the Pokemon in question, which are for the most part hidden in game and might be kind of difficult for newer players to this kind of scene to pick up on. So if anything I'm talking about in this video sounds very confusing to you, then I highly recommend checking out my PvP IVs simplified video, link up above and in the description, to get your feet wet before you dive into the deep end here in regards to Pokemon Go PvP. And without further ado, let's get into it. So starting out, what's the difference between this guide and my old Diggersby PvP IV deep dive, which is also unlisted now just so I don't confuse people by having two videos up. And I'd say this one has a greater emphasis on the defense stat, where my old deep dive had a greater emphasis on the attack stat. And that's mostly due to, how I do my deep dives improving over the years, like my methodology, how I validate stats and everything like that. A little bit more of a fine-tooth comb. So I think in my previous one, I was a little bit more willful about how important the defense stat is. Now that I have a better way of analyzing how the defense influences, how much damage you take from charge moves, for instance, the charge move breakpoints is kind of a big thing here. Then that positively impacted this new guide. Not that the old guide was all that bad though, and I will be talking about those attack weights still because those attack weights are still valid. I just think that they are overall less important than the higher bulk weights that I'm going to be talking about here. And oddly enough, the rank 1 doesn't have the HP check to be considered a premium option. So the rank 1 still gets the shaft, right? So sorry rank 1ers out there. It's not a bad build, as you'll find out, but it's not that it's not that level of quality. You know what I'm saying? All right, so what's going on with the bulk here? Well, for my minimum recommendation of bulk, I'm looking at a 139.75 defense stat with at least a 176 HP stat. And for the defense stat, you could wiggle down a little bit. And for the HP stat, though, you kind of want to be at 76. You could wiggle down, though, if your defense stat is crazy high, above 141 or something. Then you can feel a little bit more confident with a lower HP stat, but for the most part, you want at least this level of bulk here, right? So what is this level of bulk doing for you? Well, with this, against most XL Sableye, you can take them on in the 0-1 shield scenario. So you spend 0 shields, they spend 1 shield, and you can still overcome them. It can also help you out in the Metacham 1-0 shield situation. So you spend a shield, and they don't spend any shields, and now you're able to overcome them, where before you very likely would not. And then it also gives you more potential to overcome Deoxys defense form. I guess in a perfect even Steven kind of world, it gives you more potential in the 1-0 shield scenario, but because it's using Psycho Boost and 2 moves that you resist for the other charge moves, it's a lot goofier than that. Just know that this bulk weight will probably help you out at the end of the day. Now, this is the minimum bulk recommendation. If you want to be a little bit more comfortable in these matchups, and of course, other potential matchups as well, having at least a 141.1 defense stat can confer even more advantages. So instead of being up against a lower attack weighted Sableye, this could help you out now against a 120.85 attack weighted Sableye, which is basically the maximum rank that's recommended from my Sableye PvP IV deep dive. Link up above in the description to that one too if you want to get learned up on Sableye. I'd say most high-end Sableye won't have that attack stat. Some could, and that 141.1 defense could help you out more there too. To add to that, for Deoxys defense form, if you checked out my Deoxys defense form PvP IV deep dive, the Mirror Slayer Deoxys defense has a 101.67 attack stat, and 140.98 defense can still get you the breakpoint against that, which translates into the 141.1 defense stat. Because I don't think you can get a 140.98 defense stat. I think you're just going to be above that anyways if you want to get it. which puts you there. So multiple things that it can help you out on. And then on top of that, this can also help you against some like rainy cast form matchups, and I think potentially like some Azumarill matchups. There's other matchups this helps out with too. Like, yes, we're focusing on, like Sableye and Medicham and Deoxys defense form, because those are like the more important, like bigger deal kind of matchups. So it's not just all about the handful of matchups here, but these handful of matchups are going to be the focus. Now, talking to LurganRocket, one interesting thing that came up was how he was focusing on a 178 or possibly a 175 HP stat, which is too higher than what the general recommendation is here, and that's just for accounting for like a extra Shadow Claw coming from a Sableye, which I thought was pretty interesting because like when I do my simulations on PvPoke, it plays out the matchups as they should happen in a perfect world. In a perfect world that does not have inconsistent fast move denials and sneaks or go battle lag. So having an extra 2 HP to better pad yourself against the lag goblin there, which is present even at the championship level, unfortunately. So that could be another thing to consider as well, is having that higher HP stat. And then from my previous PvP IV deep dive, we saw that 178 HP stat can make you more fortified against some Skarmory matchups and some Wigglytuff matchups as well. So there's more utility to the 178 than just that. So I'd say 176 HP, you're probably pretty safe, but if you do get a 178 HP stat one, then that's also going to be very cool too. I'd be pretty excited about that. Now, when it comes to the attack stat, there is an ever so slight attack weight that could be useful for Diggersby that these super high-end bulk versions can possibly hit. It's not the main pizza, it's not the focus, it's just if you happen to have it, you got it. It could be a bit of a tiebreaker kind of thing. But what I found was that a 94.6 attack weight seems to have some subtle advantages in several matchups, namely Registeel, Meganium, and the Mirror matchup, but it also has the opportunity to help out in like other matchups as well, such as the Skarmory matchup, mostly doing like that extra like 1 or 2 damage per fire punch, or in some cases per earthquake. It's really niche, it's really minor, definitely not the focus, but if you happen to have it, it could also maybe help you out. So I think it's useful for like a tiebreaker kind of thought than the main pizza. Now, for an even higher attack weight, from the previous deep dive, and then also getting brought up against here in this deep dive, I think a 96.49 attack stat can net some pretty interesting breakpoints for Diggersby as well, such as the Deoxys defense form matchup, which isn't as important as the defense weight, but it is also something to consider. It can also get a charge move breakpoint on Talonflame, flipping the 1-0 shield situation against Talonflame, which it could be an unwinnable matchup, right? And then it can give you CMP against Registeel. And then further on, it can also bolster your advantages that you could have with an attack weight against Meganium and Wigglytuff. And it can also help out against Vigoroth, interestingly enough, but only with Hyper Beam. All the other matchups are considering Earthquake, that's the bread and butter. But you could beam down a Vigoroth, and then the extra chip damage from the breakpoint could help out there too. I'd say overall, the trade in bulk for these like shaky matchup potential gains isn't really worth it. I'd focus on the bulk stats, but I think like if you were to have like a a 96.6 attack weighted Diggersby that has like 176 to 178 HP, I think that could be worth like starring, holding on to. Maybe it'll make more sense one day to use that. Right now we're focusing on the high bulk spreads. So yeah, that's just my 5 cents on that topic. Now, if you do want some sort of tiebreaker priority chain when it comes to the stats on Diggersby, I'd say 141.1 defense is equivalent to 178 HP, which is also equivalent in my mind to the 141.88 defense. Now, logically sounding, that might not sound exactly right, because you're like, how are you telling me that 141.1 defense is equivalent to 141.88 defense, right? And this is for tiebreakers, and the advantages that you get between the defense weights and the HP weights are like so subtle that I think it really does come down to like a personal kind of preference, which one you're going to value more. Personally, I'd be pleased as all get out with a 178 HP that has a 141.1 defense stat. I probably wouldn't trade that for a 176 HP myself for a 141.88 defense stat. You know what I'm saying? That sounds like a lot. It sounds pretty wordy, but it's just like, what are you expecting to run into? What do you want to be prepared for if you have the option to be prepared for either situation? Chances are you're not going to have multiple options to work with, right? Then for lower priorities on the tiebreakers, I'd say there's a 141.57 defense stat, which I think is more valuable than a 177 HP weight or a slight attack weight. And then I feel like the slight attack weight, like the 94.6, not the 96.6, would be more useful than a 177 HP stat. Just my personal preference here. And when it comes to these tiebreakers, it is a bit, kind of personal preference. I'm just trying to help you guys make decisions if you're not as familiar with, the content yourself, to just know right away what you personally want out of your Diggersby. So here we have a table from PvPIVs.com showcasing the minimum defense and HP stats, highlighted in this video, highlighted in the article. If you want a link to this table, it's in the article, which is linked in the description, along with a couple other tables based on various stat weights here. So yeah, just showing you how simple I can make this for you guys. If you value certain stat weights more than others though, then you can edit this down here. Like what if you want I really want that 94.6 attack, Ryan Swag, that's what I want. Well, now you're limiting yourself to 19 different options. And then let's say you want that, and you're like, ooh, that 178 HP sure does look spicy, right? Well, now you got two options, son. So yeah, you can play with this tool a bit if you want to curate, the stats to what you want. Maybe you think like the attack is stupid, but this defense weight's too low. Well, congratulations. Most of these are going to be higher defense weights with the 178 HP. So yeah, so I got these tables linked down below, curated at, different levels of snobbery, I guess, for the breakpoints here. So what does the Liverpool champion, LurganRocket, the guy who won it all using a Diggersby, have to say about Diggersby IVs? What's his perspective on the matter? So I reached out to him, asking him about his PvP IVs on his Diggersby and like what matchup considerations he has regarding that. When it comes to his personal Diggersby, it is the 21311, which has that slight, 94.6 attack weight, but it only has 175 HP, which is one less than, ideal HP. So I was wondering, like, was there something I was missing on the attack weight? Is it a bigger deal than what I thought it was? Is 76 plus HP not that important? And it turns out the real dog of the situation is that that's just what he had. He already had it powered up. He does have arguably slightly better IVs that he could power up a Diggersby for, but like the stat upgrade for those other options aren't enough to really warrant the resource investment. He's hoping that he can get a better one with bigger HP because, obviously it has these matchup advantages that he too finds to be appealing, but it's just not what he has right now. It's not what he had to use. So he used what he had. And to that end, not having premium IVs, it doesn't disable you from using a Pokemon effectively. It just kind of removes some of that extra tech that I focus on in these deep dives. So I think overall, it's kind of important to know what your Pokemon can and can't do. It's good to know what the good IVs are and why they're good, but not having them doesn't, it shouldn't ruin your day. It shouldn't stop you from competing there. So just, I guess another way of looking at it, I think a lot of people come out of these deep dives, watching my videos, reading my articles, thinking that like, it's either this hyper premium thing or you're just having a complete shit option there. And what I'm trying to do is just kind of highlight to people like the advantages you can have with these bigger stats and to help people decide which one of their options is going to be the best option, right? Because aside from that, you're just following like what stat product blindly. And, doing that doesn't always lead you to the best possible stats. And if you've got nothing remotely close to like the rank 1, then do I pick my rank 20 or do I pick my rank 30? And given the stat distribution of those two options, one could clearly be better than the other. So yeah, just another way of looking at this. Now, if you do want more information about like LurganRocket and the tournament, his team, his IBs, his perspective on everything, team building process, Time Podcast actually has a really good video out on that. So link in the description to Time if you want to get learned up a little bit more about LurganRocket, his perspective on the tournament, why he picked Diggersby, all that cool stuff, linked down below. At any rate, as far as Diggersby is concerned, that's all I gotta say on it right now. If you got any questions on this content, of course, comment below, let me know what's up, and I'll be happy to help you out. And if you enjoyed this kind of content and you want to see more like it, well, make sure to subscribe to SwagTips. And then, of course, There's a lot of words. It's a long video. If you do want to reference any of this information in a text-based format, I'll link in the description to my article on GamePress covering all of this in a text-based format. I'd also like to give a special shout out to these Patreon supporters. If you want to support Swagman on Patreon, link in the description. And I guess to add to that, I have been having a lot of discussions with LurganRocket, Statistan, and a Mind Joke ever since the Liverpool tournament regarding, PvP IVs and team building and stuff like that. So I hope I can use that information to make some pretty interesting, constructive content for you guys in the future.